I was going to.
Justice is about making sure that being polite is not the same thing as being quiet. In fact, oftentimes the most righteous thing you can do is shake.
Break the computer.
The audio
shake.
Stop.
Shake it like a Polaroid picture.
Shake it off.
She says the table.
Oh, shake it off. Yeah.
That's okay. We
stay up too late.
Shake your foundation.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
This hard drive is barely keeping up with what I do anymore. But anyway, yeah. So I guess I'm the social justice person now. I've been pigeonholed into that.
Well, good, because we've never had somebody into social justice on this show.
Never
involved in any way.
True.
Negative.
So yeah, this is my social justice segment. So for my article for today, as you all know, we're in a state of emergency in the States right now, and we're not there, but we're close enough. We're affected by things. Anyways, so yeah, I have an article here from PBS NewsHour, and I mean, this seems very self-evident, and I know it's been in the media a lot, but I think it's worth going over again because who knows who's going to listen and it's worth talking about. So this was an AP fact check about Trump playing on immigration myths, and I mean, it's no secret that lately there's been a recent rash of xenophobia in North America in general, in a lot of places, actually, a lot of the developed world. Specifically the States, though, obviously. Even in Canada here, when we talked about the Yellow Vest movement, there's some xenophobic things tied into that as well. And if for those of you who don't know what xenophobia means...
It's when people hate Xena Warrior Princess.
That's exactly it. No.
Yes.
It's an irrational fear of immigrants and people from other countries.
Oh,
and things like that. So,
I thought it was people that didn't like xenomorphs.
Yeah, xenomorphs. Yeah,
xenomorphs are bad. I can see why people don't like them. But.
So I think the big thing here is, okay, so how I want to start this off is yes, there are immigration problems. I know there are. We have them here. We have them in... I mean, the Mexican border has some issues. It's true. That's fine. But the solution being proposed just doesn't really make any logical sense in reality. I know Trump just likes to say again and again, walls work, walls work, walls work, walls work. If you didn't have walls, what would you do? You know, like on and on and on, blah, 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 blah. But, I mean, people keep telling him, and reporters, like, right to his face over and over again, keep bringing up stats, and he just goes, oh, where'd you get those stats? Well, I have these stats. I have lots of stats. And
I got the best stats.
Well, today he said something like that was just so bizarre. It was just like somebody brought up, like a really good question. It wasn't like they were attacking him. They were just saying, hey, this. And he's like, oh, well, you know, I don't know where you're getting your stats from, but my Homeland Security Department tells me this. And they're like, oh, we got this from your government. These are all the stats that your departments are releasing. But anyways, so this article kind of goes through some of those myths. I'm not going to go into great detail, but I guess the bottom line is you know, right now they say the problem, the state of emergency is because all these immigrants are flooding the border. There's caravans coming. Basically, they're invading the country and murdering people and taking everybody's jobs and screwing up the economy. And it just sounds very similar to what they said about Jewish people.
They're disease-ridden people coming in to sponge and take all the jobs.
Yes, right? Like there's something about that's just terribly has a terrible historical context.
Yep.
Because they obviously are going to sponge and take all the jobs at the same time.
Yeah, right. So...
Schrodinger's.
So this goes through all these myths. One of the first ones is that vast numbers of immigrants are pouring across U.S. borders. Well, they said not really. The net flow of all migration into the United States in recent years is around 0.3% of the total population. That's a pretty small number.
Yeah.
It's roughly at a long-standing historical average. So there you go. It's average. According to analysis of government data by Lyman Stone, an economist who studies demographic issues. So yes, they actually cite their sources in this article, and that's important because Trump is not citing any of his sources and just bringing up random bullshit. And and today one of the things he did that really pissed me off is he had those the angel mothers or whatever, people who were murdered by illegal immigrants. He had them there and exploiting them, like having them there. Oh, these people are amazing people, and they lost people. You know, they're amazing. Like, it's just like, fuck you, man. Like, you don't really give a shit. This is you using that to your advantage to try to push your campaign promise and all this. And not once is there any talk about Mexico paying for it anymore. That's all gone. So, the other myth we have is immigrants are taking away jobs, which is not true. Many people have firsthand stories of losing a construction bid or an office job to a foreign worker. This happens in an economy as large and diverse as the United States, where numerous people also lose jobs to native-born Americans. But employment data suggests that the influx of immigrants helps increase overall hiring for the U.S. economy rather than erode job growth. Mm-hmm. The trend is clear in the government's monthly jobs reports. So the government has data. The data doesn't distinguish between immigrants who are in the U.S. legally and illegally. Nearly 64% of immigrants hold jobs, compared with roughly 60% of workers born in the States. That's a great number. Last year, immigrants accounted for roughly 40% of the 2.4 million jobs added. So it's just...
Wait, are you saying if there's more people that that's an influx to the economy and it creates more jobs because there's more people?
More people to do more jobs.
Correct.
That doesn't sound right.
That doesn't sound right. No, not at all.
Did you double check the math?
You can ask the government and their stats. But,
government man said it's good? Okay.
Government said it's good. No, their monthly jobs report says a lot of this stuff. So immigrants are uneducated, not true. In fact, there's a lot more educated immigrants coming than uneducated. I think is what they say here. The country has increasingly become a magnet for foreigners with doctorates and master's degrees. 16% of all immigrants, sorry, not more, but 16% of them arrived since 2000 hold an advanced degree, compared with 13% of the native-born population. So yes, more of them are educated in advanced degrees than the local population. Immigrants are to blame for today's sluggish wage growth. The weight of the research suggests that immigrants have not suppressed wages. David Card, an economist at the University of California, Berkeley, first studied the issue in 1990 by reviewing the arrival of Cuban migrants in Miami during the 1980 Mariel boat lift. So this historical rush of immigrants created a natural experiment to measure what then happened to incomes in the local area. He concluded the influx appears to have had virtually no effect on the wages or unemployment rates of less skilled workers. You know what has a real effect on wages?
What?
Capitalism. I'm sorry, it just does. Just the way things, the
profit motive.
Yes, the profit motives of companies is what creates lower wages. I'm sorry, it's just the reality of it. What else we got here? Immigrants are a drain on taxpayers, which is another bullshit thing. An immigrant and a native-born person with similar characteristics will likely have the same fiscal impact, is what the report says. So, illegal immigration leads to violent crime. No. Trump frequently highlights violence by the savage MS-13 gang, saying in his speech Tuesday that it operates in at least 20 states, and they almost all come through our southern border. So they're predominantly from El Salvador or are U.S. citizens descended from there. But there is scant evidence that immigrants are perpetuating a crime wave. In a paper published last year, sociologists Michael Light and Ty Miller reviewed crime in every state in the District of Columbia from 1990 to 2014. They found that a rising number of immigrants in the country illegally corresponded with a drop, not a rise, in reported crime. So on and on and on. So, yes, social science is important. Statistics are important.
Yeah.
You know what? You want to address the border wall. And, there was a border security. There was a bipartisan deal being worked on, and they thought he was going to sign it, right, back in, I think it was December.
Yeah.
And then he's like, nope, shut down the government. So, I mean, like, there was ways for them to work together to try to have realistic solutions. They were even going to fund, certain agencies more, and I might not agree with their approach 100%, but I think it was at least based in reality, like targeting areas that needed it rather than a wall. Like a wall is just such a fucking metaphorical, talking point. It's all about politics. It's not about.
Yeah.
There's nothing effective about it. Like, let's just be honest. We're not going to build this giant barrier across the border. And I know they say certain sections of it, and that's going to somehow stop immigration when illegal immigration, when pretty much all these reports suggest it's happening at ports of entries anyway. So I mean, anyway, we could go on about that forever. It's all self-evident at this point. It's been in the media forever. But today's a very important day because today he officially declared a state of emergency to build that wall. And we have our own movements here in Canada, thankfully that aren't as strong yet, but are there. And, they want to do similar things, So, there was actually this meme on here from from one of the yellow vest protesters saying something like, they had a sign that says white women are meant to have white babies.
Oh, yeah.
So then there's a guy behind him, like with the same sign, but then they have like SpongeBob, like going like derp, like on the same side. Like there's like a brown guy behind him doing the same thing. It's hilarious. So yes, we have people here who are being just as xenophobic and would like us to get tougher on immigration and all this bullshit. But I still have some faith in Canada in its urban centers. I feel like we're not typically like that in urban centers. As much, anyway.
Not yet, anyway.
But I don't know. Different vibe when you go to Toronto than when you're like here, right? Or Vancouver, places like that.
Yeah.
Can I make a recommendation?
Sure.
I really like the podcast Revisionist History. I'm always recommending other podcasts. Sorry.
Good podcast.
Revisionist History. So it's season 3, episode 5, General Chapman's Last Stand. Malcolm Gladwell always spins this really interestingly, but he talks about something called the Mexican Migration Project, which is a social science study of how Mexicans have migrated in and out of the United States over decades. And I haven't listened to the podcast in a while, but from what I recall, there was basically General Chapman was kind of put in charge, very effective military general. I don't know what branch of the army or the military, who was given the task of making a less porous border with Mexico, I think in the 80s. It's because until that point, people would kind of easily just kind of cross the river and just like go in between. It wasn't a big deal. And so what they found is the migration pattern changed from people from Mexico coming to the United States to work, contributing to the economy, doing stuff, and then going home off season. Right. To then, when they made it much more difficult for that to happen, people would come to the United States and then they wouldn't leave because the risk of having to come back across the border was too great. So then they'd stay. And so that you had a real shift in like that. So actually having a less porous border actually made the problem. Right. And he interviews these researchers. It's very, very interesting, and I recommend that podcast.
Super funny, actually.
Yeah, like it's always, they're pretty short. They're like half an hour long. I highly recommend that whole series, but that one is in particular very good. Called General Chapman's Last Stand.
Cool. That's all I got.
That's all you got.
Fuck Trump.
Fuck Trump.
End of.
Not literally.
Yeah.
Well,
gross
stuff, I guess.
No.
No, just kidding.
No. There's no amount.
There's no amount. No, there definitely isn't, right?
Not for me. I don't know about you.
Stormy Daniels thought there was, but...
Yeah.
Anyways.
This is off topic, but people say, hey, Lisa, you should sell your knitting stuff because, that's a good idea. And I'm like, well... No, because you'd have to pay me like pennies per hour nobody would pay, $1,000 for a sweater, which is what you'd have to pay me minimum wage in order to get a sweater done. So there's a saying among knitters that if I like that knitting is like sex. If I like you and you appreciate it, it's free. Otherwise, you can't pay me enough. And this is also true with Donald Trump. Just saying.
Same goes for crocheting.
Yeah.
Well,
and other crafty shit.
With any luck, we've only got, 2 years left to him?
Unless he gets reelected.
But it's already been 1,000,000 years since he was first elected.
It feels like 1,000,000 years. I have a feeling this wall battle is not going to go well for him, but anyway.